Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan McGuire. I am the Director of Professional Development at ACCE. Welcome to this webinar, the first in our new Coffee Break series on selecting and coaching your team to success, presented by Mark Field of the Knoxville Chamber. We will keep the housekeeping short to get right to the content today, but I just did want to make a few notes. First of all, I want to thank Mark and all of you for joining together today on this webinar in a week that I know has been very busy due to many other things. So just props to all of you for taking the time to improve your chamber teams and the ways that you serve your chambers and your communities. A note that we at the Membership Development Division are planning some roundtables to begin next week to talk about some membership-specific issues around the COVID-19 crisis. So please stay tuned on that, and we'll provide more information as soon as we have it. With respect to this webinar, as usual, attendees are in listen-only mode to avoid background noise. After Mark's presentation, we'll have a few minutes for questions, and you can ask those by typing your question in the question box in the question panel. So just open that up, type it in, and I will read the question to Mark once he's done. If we don't get to your question, we will get back to you directly. And if you would prefer to ask Mark questions after the webinar, his contact information will be on the last slide. Third, the presentation and a couple handouts are uploaded to the webinar panel. You can find the box entitled Handouts, click to download. I'll also post those as well. And finally, we're recording the webinar, and it will be up on the ACC website on our webinar page no later than Monday, and hopefully sooner. So just to briefly introduce Mark, he's the Senior Vice President of the Knoxville Chamber and brings more than 35 years of sales and marketing experience to his position. He oversees investor development and retention, events and sponsorships, communication, marketing, and volunteers. Mark is on the U.S. Chamber Institute of Organization Management Board of Trustees, and he is a member of the ACCE Membership Development Division Advisory Board. He and his wife, Vicki, have 2 children and 7 grandchildren, and you are very lucky to be listening to his words of wisdom today. So with that, Mark, I will hand the presentation over to you.
Susan, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, everyone, for being on today. Again, I will echo what Susan said. Thank you guys so much for what you're doing in your communities right now. I know there are a lot of people that are in uncharted territory with their businesses, and you guys are providing great service to them, I'm sure. And so thank you on behalf of all the chambers and all the businesses in your community. I know they really appreciate it. So today we're going to be talking about selecting and coaching your team to success, specifically around your sales team. And we have a lot of information here, so I'm going to breeze through it. I don't want to say too quickly, but pretty quickly so that we can get to all the information. And as Susan said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have after the webinar is over by email or by phone, either one. So if you see anything in here that's of particular importance to you, please let us know and we'll make sure we get to it. The first thing I wanted to say is, probably the most important skill you have as a leader in the membership development side of your business is developing your team as leaders themselves. And so making sure that you're selecting the right kind of people is so critically important. So we want to help you in any way we can talk about that today. So first of all, as we talk about selecting people, I think it's really important for you first to have a vision for the kind of culture you're trying to establish in your sales team. So we'll talk a little bit about what that culture needs to look like, but that's the very first step in my mind of deciding what you're going to do about selecting people moving forward, is that you have a clear picture in your mind of the kind of culture for sales you're trying to establish inside your organization. And obviously the most important component of that is strong team members. So if you'll look there, you'll see some of the course topics we're going to cover pretty quickly today. Talk a little bit about team culture we already have, expectations that you would have for your team, recruiting, interviewing, testing them. That may be new for some of you to talk about testing them prior to hiring. We'll talk a little bit about the onboarding process of them and then some coaching strategies, although We're going to be talking more in the next webinar, the second part of this series, on coaching and motivating your sales team moving forward. But we'll hit a little bit of that today. We're going to spend more time today on interviewing and onboarding and a little bit on compensation. So let's start out with expectations. You know, what kind of expectations do you have for your sales team or people that you're going to have going out, bringing new members on? You know, our primary goals, and I would say most primary goals of people in this area, is to grow revenue and members. That obviously helps you increase your cash flow. We also ask our sales team to upsell members. We are on the tiered benefits structure, and so our members have the opportunity to upsell themselves, or we upsell them into categories of our membership that make it possible for them to receive more benefit. And so that's another area that we work hard in. And then obviously you want to try to increase the retention rate. Part of the way to do that is in the very beginning, at the very first of the application, is to make sure that you're getting the right kind of people to join. So as you set expectation for your salespeople, it's really not just about getting them to have people join your chamber. It's about helping them understand who should join your chamber. Secondary goals are to promote a positive image. I tell our sales staff frequently, if we walk out of an office, I hope you've left the door open for them to consider joining the chamber again. I hope it's not just a one-time meeting, that we never have an opportunity to talk with them again about why they would join our organization and come alongside us to try to help the region grow. So it's really, and again, it's really not just about a positive image of the chamber, but it's also a positive image of what's going on economically in our community. We obviously want to increase event attendance. We do that with prospects as well as potential new members. It's not unusual for us to invite people to be our guest at our member events so that they can get a taste of what our chamber looks like before they actually join. And then the last thing I would say that we have an expectation of is that our salespeople manage data well, that they know the kind of members they're going after, and that they're being very strategic and looking and targeting the kind of people that we need in our chamber to move our region forward. And so those are all things that we have expectation of our sales team. And obviously those may change for you. You may have other expectations for what they would do inside your chamber as well. Talk a little bit about culture. You know, around here we try to build a sales culture that's around encouragement. We do want to have a common vision. That common vision is that we're going to try to help people understand how we can help them grow their business. We obviously want people on our team that are people-centered. I like people that are skeptical. I like people that are curious to join our sales team, people that ask questions, people that are very curious about what people do and how they do it and how they got started and why they've been in business as long as they have and why they chose that kind of business. So I like people that are skeptical. When I say skeptical as well, curious and skeptical. They don't just believe everything they've been told. They're constantly asking questions about why that is and how it got there. Skeptical from the fact too that if people say, hey, you know, I'm going to send you a check, or hey, I'm going to join the chamber next month. Are they really? You know, are they really going to do that? Are we going to have to spend a lot of time on follow-up, or are we going to go ahead and close that membership opportunity while we're meeting with them in the beginning? I like people obviously that are motivated and empowered. I even said this morning in a small staff meeting that you know, we're trying to hire racehorses in our organization, and racehorses by nature need to be reined in a little bit. We're not in the business of hiring plow horses, people that just work really hard. We're looking for talent, and we're looking for people who feel empowered and who are leadership oriented. So we're looking for motivated people. We want them to be goal oriented. We want them to have goals in their mind when they come to us that they want to reach, whether it's to drive more income, or to buy a new house, or to send their kids to private school. Whatever it is that they're trying to do, we want them to be competitive and goal oriented. Again, going back to data driven, we want salespeople are not very data driven in general, but we want to teach them that and help them understand why it's important to understand the data. Flexibility is important. You know, based on like the situation we're in now, we may have to change our compensation plan. We're obviously always going to look for ways to help our people make more money and to satisfy their needs. But in a situation like we're in now, we're not asking anybody to join our chamber in this kind of atmosphere. And so we met last week and said, look, it's very it's a very difficult time for the businesses in our community, and now's not a time for us to be asking them to pay us money. So we need them to be flexible about their pay and how we're going to compensate for that. I like for them to be transparent. I like for them to come in here and tell me they're having a hard time, or maybe things aren't going well, or they're not really sure what's happening, or, hey, I really messed this meeting up. I just want them to be able to be transparent and open. Looking for constant improvement, and obviously a very professional persona. I say this to a lot of people in our industry. You know, if you hire people that you're just looking for the lowest common denominator or the least expensive option for salespeople, you're really cheating your region, your community, and you're also cheating your organization. I'm looking for the most professional persona that I could possibly afford in the person I'm trying to attract to come to the chamber. So let's talk about recruiting. The biggest question people ask me is, well, you know, where do you find good salespeople? And so the question I would have is, where do you hunt? We like to use our ambassadors. I don't like to steal people out of our ambassador program. I think that leaves other ambassadors with a bad taste in their mouth about why didn't he talk to me, or why did he choose that specific person. But what I do like to do is use them as a good referral source. They know a lot of people. Our ambassadors are very connected in our community. So our ambassadors are a really good source of referrals for us for potential sales team members. Obviously, networking events, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the kinds of questions I ask at those networking events. People who are in staffing sales tend to do well in the chamber business. We've hired a couple of different people from the staffing industry that have done incredibly well. Again, I'll talk to you a little bit about what kind of experience is important. People in retail that are looking for an opportunity to get into outside sales, people who are sharp, maybe they're in management or in a management program in retail are good. And then people in hospitality, people that have been in sales in the hospitality industry or possibly in a bit sales in the hospitality industry. So the question is, who do you ask? And how do you ask? So what I normally do is I'm constantly looking for people to join our sales team, whether we have an opening or not. So it's not unusual for Ashley and I, the senior salesperson in our organization, to say, boy, I met somebody today that would make a really good team member. Now, we may not be in a position to hire that person at that point, but we're obviously keeping that person's name in a list to make sure when we do get in that position, and we don't get there often, but when we do get in that position, we have names of people that we can go to. And a question I want you to ask yourself today is, can you trust your gut? And the answer for me is no. I meet a lot of people that I think would be a really good salesperson that at the end of the day is not equipped or has the experience to do what we want them to do. But my gut tells me, you know, they've got a great personality, or they present really well, or they have a professional persona, but there's a lot more to it than that. And so the answer for me is, can you trust your gut? And the answer for me is no. So here's the questions I ask when I'm at networking events. Do you know anyone with great sales skills? That is the most essential question that I ask at networking events when I'm meeting people. And I talk about our chamber's culture and impact to potential candidates. Even people, again, if I don't have an opening and somebody says, you know, I'm really not happy where I'm at now, or I'm in sales, you know, I talk to them about the culture that we have here and what kind of impact we can make on somebody in regards to a sales job with us or a career with us. I always, as I said before, I always keep a list of potential candidates. The ABR method, always be recruiting. It's important to constantly have a list of people that you think might be a successful person for you in the future. So always be recruiting at your events. And then I'll say it again, you know, that question, do you know anyone with great sales skills, will really help you build that list. And most of the time you'll have people say, you know, I do know somebody that has really good sales skills. They sold me something, or I've interacted with them in the past and I've watched them and they do a really good job. Those are the kind of people you want to have on your list of potential candidates going forward. This is very important. Nothing can replace successful experience. I was jokingly talking to Ashley the other day, and I said, if you try to replace talent and experience with hard work, there's no limit to what you can't accomplish. You just can't make up for talent and experience with hard work. We really are not just looking for hard workers, although we want our people to work hard. We're really looking for people that have specific talent and specific experience. And that's going to make your job a lot easier. I know when you bring someone into your organization, you get them oriented and you put them into your community and they're meeting with your potential members and your current members, that person could cost you as much as $100,000 either in lack of confidence in your community, or spending a lot of time with them, or the pay that you've given them and working for you a year and a half and it not working out for them. So it's really important that you think about not just hiring somebody that you know is a hard worker, but to really hone in on what kind of experience do you want them to have, and what kind of talent do they need to be able to be successful with your organization. So who are you looking for? Here's the kind of person we're looking for. And I gave you some traits before. I'm looking for a self-starter. I'm looking for somebody that can get started really quickly. I'm looking for somebody who has a very positive outlook. Obviously a hard worker, but again, don't let hard work be the sole reasoning why you would hire somebody that they told you, oh, they're a really hard worker. We want hard workers, but we really want somebody that's talented and also somebody that has the right persona. Are they involved in their civic community? And again, do they have successful experience? Those are all things that we're looking for. Just talk a little bit about interviewing once we find some candidates, and I'm going to help you identify whether or not those candidates are going to be potential hires for you. But in the interviewing process, we want to create the right atmosphere for the interview. Most of the time when we interview people, we're interviewing them either in a one-on-one atmosphere or a one-on-two atmosphere. So for instance, again, Ashley's our director of development here, and Ashley and I together normally will interview somebody on the first go-round. We have kind of a set of pat questions that she asks and a set of questions that I ask. We kind of play a little bit of bad cop, good cop in those interviews. But we do ask questions that are really difficult for the prospect to answer, because we're really trying to figure out how they react and how they are as far as being fleet-footed in front of someone that they don't know necessarily. And that's what's going to happen when they get out there and represent you. They're going to be in front of people that they don't know. And so we want to know, if that person asks difficult questions, how do they react? Are they pretty fleet-footed? Are they comfortable? Do they do they respond well? And you want to have the right people in the room. So here's what we normally do. We'll do a one-on-one interview or a two-on-one interview, and then we'll bring them back and let them meet with the team that's involved in sales or supporting sales. I want to know that this person not only has the right traits, the right experience, and the right talents to be with our team, but I also want our team to feel like that's somebody they could see working with us. That's very important to us, because we have met people that we think have the talent and the traits, but when we met them, either their personality was a little too strong, or maybe they were a little bit more laid back than our team was, and we want someone that's going to fit our team. And so fits is important as talent and experience for us. So you want to have the right people in the room, at least on that second interview. And then last, as I said before, you want to ask the right questions. And so we can help you figure that out in just a second. So what kind of questions are you going to ask? Well, we put them in three different categories. We ask a fair amount of questions about them personally. Tell us about yourself, and ask specific questions around those things. We want to talk about their aptitude. Do they have the potential aptitude to do what we want them to do? And so we're going to ask questions around trying to get at whether or not they have the traits and the aptitude to do every day what we ask them to do. And then the last part is do they have experience? It is unusual, highly unusual, that we would hire anybody here that has no sales experience. It can be different. It can be different kinds of sales experience, like retail sales, and it could even be having been a server in a restaurant. That's sales. But they have to have some sort of ability to either close people or to present a product to them in such a way that people would buy it or be interested in it. So here are some of the questions that we ask, and you may think this is kind of crazy, but when it comes to personal, I will ask this question: do you have a best friend? And they'll normally say yes. And I'll say, well, if I were to go to your best friend right now and ask them what is the one thing they would never change about you, what would it be? And I like to get an answer to that question. That usually gets at the heart of who they are as a person. I'll also ask them, so if I went to that best friend and told them I was going to give them a magic wand and they could change anything in the world about you, what would they tell me that is? That's a really great question. Again, that will normally get to the heart of what maybe a weakness they have is and what their best friend thinks about that. So those are the kind of personal questions I will ask about who are you as a person. Second would be aptitude. An example of that is, what is the toughest goal you've ever set for yourself? I want to know if they can quickly identify something that they put out there for themselves that was tough, that was something that they knew was going to take hard work and that they knew was going to be take diligence on their part to reach. If they can't give us an answer to that question, something's wrong, because there's probably somebody that don't set lofty goals for themselves. Somebody that does set lofty goals for themselves can usually tell you, here's a goal I have, or here's a goal I had, and it was tough, and here's what it took to get to it. And then an experience example would be, explain the steps you take in the sales process from beginning to end. You will get really quickly to somebody's experience if they can tell you how they go about prospecting or how they go about the sales process from beginning to end. Now, that will vary depending on what kind of sales experience they've had. But again, it helps you understand is, do they understand the sales process, and have they had enough experience to know what that's like? Those are just examples in each of those areas that I told you about. So here's, I told you, maybe something that's a little new to you guys, but we wouldn't even think about hiring somebody for a sales team position with our company without, or our organization, without testing them. And you say, well, Mark, what kind of test do you give them? Well, we normally rely on one, but it's not unusual for us to do a couple. We like a sales aptitude test that helps us understand what kind of traits and tendencies they have in these specific areas that I'll go over in a minute. We like personality tests, Myers-Briggs. We like, there's other sales tests that we can use as well, like Myers-Briggs or DISC. You can find those in John Maxwell speakers have availability to those, Sandler Sales. You probably have other people in your community that are business coaches, or they're speaking coaches or professional speakers that are part of those kind of programs, and they have different personality or DISC profiles that they can administer. 123test.com is another test that are free that you might want to access to help understand what their personality is like. Another one is communication. How do they communicate? It's very important that you look for someone who has the ability to communicate with others that are not just looking for information, but are willing to give that information to others. And so those are all different ways that we test people that we're interested in hiring. So when we're testing for sales aptitude, there's a couple of really good sales aptitude tests. One is ctssalesprofile.com, ctssalesprofile.com. Those tests are about $175, but they are worth every dime that we've ever spent on testing someone to see whether or not they have the aptitude to sell well in our organization. And again, those aptitudes, and there's another one called salesdrive.info, another really good sales profile exam or aptitude exam that will help you understand if they have the traits necessary to be successful in sales. And here's some of the things that we find out when someone takes the CTS profile. How do they think? Are they concrete and interpersonal? Would they rather just be in a room and take information in and analyze it? Are they someone who is more flexible and dynamic, and they hear things and they develop their thought process after they've heard lots of different ideas? They're very flexible about how they go about it. And then there's the complex and analytical. We really like people to be in that flexible, dynamic range. Here are some of the things they also score in these aptitude tests: people's social competence. Once they get in a crowd of people, how competent are they when they get there? Their social drive. Do they really want to be around people? We have found people that have really great social competence, but they could care less if they got around a crowd of people. We found it the other way around. We found people that love to get around people, but once they get there, they're not incredibly confident. And that's, I find that unusual, but we've seen it as we've tested people. We like people that want to make a good impression. Not too good of an impression, not so much that they would lie about themselves to make a good impression, but someone who has a high need to make a good impression. So they're obviously going to dress well, they're obviously going to present well, they're obviously going to say the right things when they get in front of somebody if they have a need to make a good impression. We don't want people that have a really high need to nurture. Those people are going to spend all day, every day on the phone trying to tell the people that they've already met with how they can help them. So we want a medium need to nurture. We want people that are highly goal-oriented. We want people that are skeptical. We do not care if anybody has detail orientation. Normally, a really good salesperson is going to forget things that need to be on the application, and so we'll backfill that with a phone call or whatever else we need to. But detail orientation is not a huge need for us in the sales process. And then we don't want somebody that has too high a need for control, because they are going to dominate the conversation, and they're going to dominate, they're going to constantly be telling your staff what needs to happen in order for the people they sell to be happy. So we want a medium need for control. Some of the other sales tests look at need for achievement, which is kind of the same thing as goal orientation: competitiveness, optimism, confidence, persuasion, relationship. Those are other things that these aptitude tests test for. So once we found the candidate, first of all, back in that, when we talked about the culture you want to build, it's very important that you have a compensation plan that is fitted to the people that you're trying to hire. I would think twice about hiring anybody on full commission. I think if you have someone who has a high need to make a good impression and who is very goal-oriented, but is having to work really hard just to make their house payment or their electricity bill, they may tell your potential members things that you can't deliver on. And so I just don't like our people being in an environment of full commission. The other thing is I like to be able, I can't find the kind of person that I want to find to work on a full commission basis. I want someone who's going to go out into our community and, again, leave a really good impression in the community and be a good advocate for the economic progress in our community, to be able to go and talk to Rotary clubs and wherever else they might be asked to speak or present. And normally a full commission salesperson, that's not inside their strengths. I would avoid draws against commission. I don't think that you pay people against what they might produce. I think if you hire and find the right kind of people for the job, you should be willing to pay them to do it, a decent base salary, and an incentive plan that gets them in a position to go out there and do a really good job for you. So you want to pick the right rate. That's all going to depend on how many potential new members you can bring in a month. And I'm more than happy to talk with you guys about how we arrive at that rate. But we don't have time today to go through the formulation. We like to pay our people quickly. So we pay them every 2 weeks, their base salary and also their commission, so that they can get paid what they've done on a really quick basis. Be creative about how you compensate them. It's not unusual for us to compensate outside the plan. If we have a super month, it's not unusual for us to go and give them extra perks or to give them time off or whatever else we need to make them feel good about the job they did. I think it's important to consider success over time. If you hire salespeople and try to evaluate them at the end of 90 days, and if they're not where you think they should be, you're really probably cheating yourself. I like to make a commitment to someone we hire for a minimum of 1 to 2 years. I want to have the time to bring them up to where they can be potentially. Now, obviously, we have to make sure that we're hiring the right kind of people in order to make that commitment. So that's where we want to be. So we're looking at hiring people for long-term success. And we're constantly looking for ways to keep rewarding our sales team, whether that be sending them to have personal services, massages or nails done, or playing golf, or whatever else it is. We're always open to looking at ways to reward them for a job well done. So once you find the correct people, onboarding is very important. So we put people through an orientation. We try to prepare them to go into the community with the proper information that they need. We ask them to do a fair amount of shadowing, where we ask them really not to talk in the meetings. So we ask them to go on a sales call meeting and just sit there and listen to our other salespeople make presentations. And then we'll go with them and actually help them pitch and maybe make it a more two-on-one kind of meeting with a potential member. And then we hope to launch them eventually so that they're out on their own. And then we're going with them occasionally to follow up and see how they're doing. So it's a pretty strategic way of going about making sure that they're ready to go when we launch them. Here's what it looks like for us. It's usually a week of orientation for them, meeting with everyone in the chamber to see what all the chamber does. We give them a week of preparation so that they're putting their pitch together and they're starting to understand what it is they need to be telling people. Then we ask them to do 2 weeks of shadowing with our current sales staff. And then we give them 2 weeks of where we're going with them. So 2 weeks of them going with us, and then 2 weeks of us going with them. And then hopefully they're ready to launch. We say this and we mean it. We never want someone to launch until they're saying, I'm ready to go. We never say, you're ready to go. We always say, tell us when you're ready to go. And usually that happens a little quicker than that 6 weeks if we've done everything right. And then we follow up with them weekly and monthly, especially for the first 6 to 9 months that they're on board with us. Coaching, the importance of coaching is frequency. So we're constantly coaching each other, coaching from the top down. Ashley spends a fair amount with our sales team, as do I, about how are things going. How are we doing? What kind of objections are you hearing? How do people feel about the chamber? So we are coaching our people very frequently. I'm going to say at least on a weekly basis. We are really big about encouraging folks. It's very important for our people to feel important and encouraged and a part of our team, and know that they're doing well. And so we are big on encouraging them to do well. We are, again, very encouraging about them being transparent as well, to make sure that we know when things are not going well, or when they've had a bad meeting, or maybe if someone's kind of beat them up about things that have happened with the chamber in the past. So we like to know about those things. We also want to reinforce our expectation and the kind of culture we're trying to build. So we're constantly saying, this is what we expect. This is the kind of language we want you to use. This is the kind of culture that we've built around here, that people expect to hear from us in this kind of way. And we want people obviously to be asking the correct questions. And so we're coaching them constantly about what they're telling people and how they're telling them. We've got to ask them the correct questions as well. It's very important for us to ask the right questions of our salespeople when they're new in the field, to understand what they're doing and how they're doing. But all those are things that are involved in our coaching. It is not unusual for us to hold our sales team up and prop them up and help make them feel important to what's going on. I have a saying around here, it's impossible to retain members until they have first joined. And the only way that they join is because our sales team or someone on our staff has went out and met with someone and asked them to become a part of our organization. And so it's very important that we're saying the right things, doing the right things, and encouraging our sales team to be successful. All right, so that's a lot of information. I know everybody's probably got a lot of questions. Again, if we don't get to your questions today, I'm more than happy to answer those questions in email format, or if I need to get on a phone call with you, I'm glad to do that as well. And we will have a second part of this webinar to talk more about motivating and coaching your sales team. Susan?
Hey, thank you, Mark. Terrific information, and thanks everyone for your attention and listening. And we're a little short on time. We have one question. We'll get that one question in, and then if you have anything else, just follow up with Mark or myself, and we'll get your answer. The question we have, Mark, is compensation. In a base plus commission salary structure, do you give a bonus for the 90 days as they ramp up their pipeline, or a longer time period?
We actually do. So it is not unusual for us to start someone at a base salary, and I'm just going to use round figures here. Do not say that this is what it is. Let's say the base was 25. At the end of 90 days, there is a potential for us to give them an additional part of the base, maybe say push them up to 27.5 once we know we've made a really good decision and that they're getting ready to launch. Normally, we would do that in a 6-month time period. So at the end of 90 days, we probably are feeling pretty confident about that we've made a really good decision. I probably wouldn't bump that base salary up until at least 6 months. But we do put them on a ramp up. So we don't expect that they're going to bring in their quota. We have a sales quota. I'll talk about that in the next webinar. We don't expect that they're going to meet that quota. So we do have a ramp up. So we say, boy, your first month, if you do 4 new members, we're going to be tickled to death. Second month, if you do 4 again, we're going to be tickled. Third month, if you do 6, we're happy. We hope to get you up to speed in 6 months, which for us is about 12 new members a month for each person. Does that answer the question, I hope?
I think it does. Thank you. So, folks, I have a couple other questions, but I will send those to Mark, and he will respond directly. And as I said, if anything else comes to mind, contact Mark, and be sure to tune in for our next part of this webinar in April, where Mark will talk a little bit more about coaching and development of his staff. There he is. There's his contact information right there. I will have this webinar recording up on the MDD page and the webinar page very soon. And don't forget, there's some handouts here that you can download right now, or I'll also have those up on the recording. So thanks to everyone for the time you've taken this afternoon. And Mark and Ashley, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your expertise and advice. So everyone, hang in there, stay healthy, and we will see you on our next ACC webinar. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.